Hosea 4, we'll be in verse 1. So we finished up chapter 3. That was a short chapter. So tonight we begin chapter 4. Hosea chapter 4. Hosea 4, verse 1. Hear the word of the Lord, ye children of Israel, for the Lord hath a controversy with the inhabitants of the land, because there is no truth, nor mercy, nor knowledge of God in the land. Sounds like he's talking about America, but he's not. He's talking about Israel. But it is true of our age now. You know, by and large, there's not much knowledge of God. Now, the old people know it. My generation has a passing knowledge of it. Not that they live by it, but they know it. But the new generation that's coming up now, they just don't know anything about God. You've got to start at ground zero, and it's a head-on collision between you and communism and socialism, and you got to start with there is a creator. You're accountable to him. I mean, it's rough. But he says this is Israel as a whole. We've gotten through the illustration part. Hosea's done the wife thing and the wife that left him, and then he goes and gets another wife and tells this wife, you're going to stay, we're going to be married, but you're going to be faithful to me, even though I'm not going to be around. That was in chapter 3. He says, you're going to be many days without me. Wow. What a way to get married. I guess that it's not any different than when guys would go off to war. They'd get married before they went off to war. They wouldn't see the bride again for they didn't know how long. It'd be as long as Uncle Sam said. And sometimes they wouldn't come home. But that's a picture of Israel. The Israel right now is without a king and without God, and they're in time out. Now one day he'll be back. That'll be the millennium. And they'll be married again. But now Hosea has already done his illustration. He does a sermon totally different than preachers do nowadays. It's interesting if you want to find the mechanics of preaching, to find it in the Bible. The Bible doesn't do anything the way we do it nowadays. Here he's done his illustration first. Without doing the points, he's done the illustration. Now he's going to rapid fire give you 3 points. And then he's, without telling you which point the supporting material belongs to, going to go ahead and give you all the supporting material, but not under the points. You're going to have to figure that out. Here's his 3 points. He says, no truth, no mercy, no knowledge of God. Now he does skip a few verses. He gets all excited about his points, and then he skips a few verses, drops down to verse 5, and gives you a conclusion to his message. Therefore shalt thou fall in the day, and the prophet also shall fall with thee in the night, and I will destroy thy mother. That's his conclusion. We've seen his 3 points and his conclusion. The shock value that he uses to make Israel toe the line is this: the use of a prophet. Anytime God called a prophet, it was because the priest hadn't done their job. Because the priest was supposed to give them information, supposed to teach them what God wanted and expected. But when the priest is not doing that, God says, okay, I'm going to call somebody special. And when he called the prophet out, you knew the boom was about to fall. And that's Hosea. And all these minor prophets, the reason they're so negative in tone is because they're prophets. When a prophet comes on the scene, he's saying, this is your last chance, straighten up or it's over. Look at Hosea 12. Hosea 12, verse 10. He says, I have also spoken by the prophets, and have multiplied visions, and used similitudes by the ministry of the prophets. He's saying, I've given you plenty of chances. The prophets were the end of the line. Now you're done. Whew. Look at it in Jeremiah. Jeremiah 25, verse 4. Jeremiah 25, verse 4. The Lord hath sent you all his servants, the prophets. They're working directly for God. I mean, in an essence, so was the priest. But sometimes they weren't doing their job. So God says, okay, I'm going to circumvent the priesthood because they're not doing what I intended them to. He says, the prophets, the Lord hath sent unto you all his servants, the prophets, rising early and sending them. But ye have not hearkened, nor inclined your ear to hear. So what more can he do? He's got the kings. He's gotten rid of the kings. They're in the divided kingdom, and now they're in the scattered kingdoms. I mean, they're Waffle House at this point. Scattered, smothered, and chunked. And he says, I've got a last resort. We'll pull out prophets. And prophets did not profit them, no pun intended. Or maybe pun intended. Hosea 4. Hosea 4. One other thing I needed to say about verse 1. Verse 1, you'll notice that it's obviously a message to Israel. Now, we can make some spiritual applications to that. That's fine. You can do that through the whole Bible. However, this is a message directed directly to Israel, the nation. And it still applies because this is not complete yet. He says, hear the word of the Lord, ye children of Israel. When it calls them out by name, we don't have to guess at what he meant. It says it. He says, inhabitants of the land. And then again he says, in the land. The land in the Bible is not where you live. It's his land, Israel. Hosea 4 verse 2. By swearing and lying and killing and stealing and committing adultery, they break out and blood touches blood. We'll go through that a little bit at a time. He says, swearing, that's America. But I live in America, so I say America, and I can say that. I don't know. I think it's probably worldwide. I'm sure it's not limited to America. The language has just gone haywire. Now, I will tell you one thing I was just talking to Chris about this morning. The strange thing is this. Curse words always have to come out in English. When somebody really wants to curse, it doesn't matter. You can be in Mexico and you'll hear the cursing in English. They like to use English curse words. There's a power behind the English language because God approved it to write his book. So there's something about English that people love. And you'll find it in the cursing for some reason. He says lying, killing, stealing, committing adultery. So those are all good topics that most preachers avoid. I mean, they should have been preaching on it in Hosea's day. He said they weren't. So you want to find out if your church is heading toward apostasy, how often do they touch on those subjects? If they're not touching those subjects, Hosea would come in and lambaste them. Whew. He says something interesting there at the end of the verse. They break out and blood toucheth blood. Okay, what does that mean? That means blood touching blood. That means a multiplication of infraction. It means, he said, break out. Like they were supposed to be in somewhere and they broke out. Well, the most basic explanation for it is your blood is supposed to be in your body, right? And when you break the skin, it comes out. It breaks out. But it's more than that. God set up definite boundaries, and man likes to break the boundaries. They break out, and when you break out of the boundaries God set, you no longer have safety. Murder and blood will be the result. Look at Deuteronomy 32. Deuteronomy 32, verse 8. Deuteronomy 32, verse 8. When the Most High divided to the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel. That is, God set up continents for people. And you naturally find your nation and your people type. The Tower of Babel made that clear. You can only speak the language that your ancestors spoke. I mean, unless you went and learned another one. And those bounds were set. In the I didn't get you the verse, but in Peleg's day, it says the earth was divided. Okay, so that's where the continental drift comes from. I should have get you the verse on that. That's in the genealogy in Genesis. That's probably chapter 4 or 5. It may be later. It may be 10. Anyway, y'all can look that up. I didn't do it. Acts chapter 17. Acts 17. There's a reason God set up bounds. But man always thinks that a boundary, a rule, is bad. Somebody's trying to bring me down, tell me I can't do something. No, sometimes it's for your good. It's good. Now, these bounds that God set have a great purpose in mind. Acts 17:26. He hath made of one blood all nations of men for to dwell on all the face of the earth. That is, you can get a blood transfusion from anybody of any race. Your blood's all the same. But there's something that's not the same. And hath determined the times before appointed and the bounds of their habitation. That is, you're supposed to be in a certain boundary. He says, if haply they may seek after God. I didn't put the next verse in there. What's the next verse? If haply they may feel after him, though he be not far from every one of us. Okay, so the boundary is supposed to make you seek God. Because what happens is, what people do, they say, this town is so boring, there's nothing to do. You know, doesn't everybody say that about every town? Okay, so what's that do? It makes you seek something else. You're supposed to seek God. But if you can run over to the next country and see what kind of mess they got over there, you can keep filling your wish list. And it stretches your time frame before you seek God. He says those boundaries are set up on purpose. So a man comes to the end of what he thinks is, you always think that if I could just do this, I'd be happy. Then you do that and you realize that wasn't happy. What's the next thing? At some point, you're naturally supposed to say, it all has no purpose. Just like Ecclesiastes. I've tried it all, none of it fulfills me. And that's when you start seeking God. And God reveals himself. But he says those country bounds were intended that way. So a man stays right within this. He doesn't go beyond that. He gets frustrated quickly and turns to God. But now we don't. And you see what the world's like now. He said blood touches blood. Now how does that happen? Leviticus chapter 20. Blood touches blood. Now obviously he's referring here to probably adultery because he mentioned that previous to this. Leviticus 20 verse 10. And the man that committeth adultery with another man's wife, even he that committeth adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. Okay, blood touching blood. Both of them need to be put to death. They get stoned. So now you've got a multiplication. This is one of those categories I would call iniquity. Because it's a sin that affects more than one individual. It's a group effort. And the casualty rate is much higher. It's also murder. Big cities are bad about murder. I don't know what... I think Pensacola's always been a good one as far as low murder rate, but not anymore. We've gotten too big for our britches. Mobile's always been bad. I wouldn't want to be in Pritchard. Memphis was horrible. I always say Memphis is a good place to be from, as far away from as you can get. Numbers chapter 35. Numbers 35 verse 33. He says, so you shall not pollute the land wherein ye are, for blood it defileth the land. Blood dropping on the ground, God says, defiles the ground. And the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it. So a murderer must be killed. I know that that's anti this age. There is biblical grounds for the death penalty. There, you know what there's not biblical grounds for? I don't want to go off on a tirade about this, but if you read your Bible, there's no biblical grounds for a prison. The Romans had one, but that's not God's system. God's system was, if you commit a infraction of the law, here's what you owe. You immediately make reparations, or you do this sacrifice, or these type of things. Immediate. There's no imprisonment. That's something of the devil. The devil does imprisonments. Just look up the word prison in the Bible and you'll find it. Okay, I got to move on. 2 Samuel 14. 2 Samuel 14, verse 6. The other way that blood touches blood is just human nature. Human nature is, how dare you talk to me that way, and then the fist fight breaks out. Just anger. That kind of blood. Punching somebody in the nose. Believe it or not, blood talks to God. You find that under Abel. Abel's blood was speaking to God. When the blood drops on the floor, the life of the flesh is in the blood. That blood has life. You know what life does? It speaks to the giver, God. And it says, innocent blood or guilty blood, it's always speaking. Do I? 2 Samuel 14, look at verse 6. And thy handmaid had 2 sons, and they 2 strove together in the field. 2 boys mad at each other. And there was none to part them, but the one smote the other and slew him. And behold, the whole family is risen against thine handmaid. Okay, we've got the Hatfield McCoys here. That's what happens. 2 people get mad at each other, and it starts a family feud, and that's what goes on. He says, and they said, deliver him that smote his brother, that we may kill him, for the life of his brother whom he slew. And we will destroy the heir also, and so they shall quench my coal which is left, and shall not leave to my husband neither name nor remnant upon the earth. Now she was upset here because they were going to get back at her, because of a long line of, back and forth, people getting mad at each other. And her family, somebody put a hit out on them, had a contract on him, and that was the last boy in the line, and the name wouldn't continue. Well, okay, that's one example. But if it's happened once, it's happened 1,000,000 times. Okay, so that's how blood touches blood. One compounds the next. Now, when that boy gets his revenge, the next one comes along and says, you did that to our cousin. Now it's going to spread out farther and farther. That's the way bickering starts in a church. You said that to somebody I like. Well, I don't like them, and then it just spreads and spreads and spreads. That's how the little cliques start. Hosea 4, verse 3. Hosea 4, verse 3. We find out about inanimate objects all through the Bible. People don't mention it, but inanimate objects. There is a spirit world. You believe in the spirit world. If you're saved, you do. And there is in the spirit world, inanimate objects still have communication capability. We're going to find it here. Therefore shall the land mourn. I know everybody takes that to mean the people. But I think it's the land, the ground. And everyone that dwelleth therein shall languish. So not only the land, but the people that are dwelling in the land. I think it made it clear there's 2 categories. With the beasts of the field and with the fowls of heaven, yea, the fishes of the sea also shall be taken away. That is what's going on in our grocery stores right now. Yeah. God's taking it away. You won't honor him with it, he'll take it from you. And as a nation, I think this is probably the curse. There, you could lay it at the feet of many things, but I think abortion. When we kicked God out of the schools, said we don't want you around our kids, and we said our kids we want to sacrifice. Those are two things he says, oh, you'll pay for that. And we're about to. There's a connection between the country's agricultural prosperity and her moral condition. The morals are out the window now in America. Now, I know you can find times in history where it's been worse. I'm studying the ancient Romans. They were some wicked people. I don't know that we've gotten as bad as they were. I mean, open wickedness. We think that we have immorality in America. Nothing like ancient Rome did and Pompeii. Talk about total wickedness. That was open wickedness that was accepted by everybody. Now, that's where it'll head if we're not careful. Hopefully we'll be out of here by the time it gets to that point. But there's a connection. God doesn't let man get away with sin forever. And one of the things he does is your food goes bye-bye. Look at it in 2 Chronicles. 2 Chronicles 7, verse 14. Second Chronicles 7:14. This is the same land. Every time he's talking about land, he's not talking about America. America. Good luck finding America in the Bible. 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people, Israel, which are called by my name, Israelites, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, Daniel did, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land. If you study the agriculture in the land of Israel, you'll see its agriculture dies when the Jews are not running it. It's coming back. It came back, and now it's on the downward spiral again. The Jordan River is drying up over there right now. It's just a trickle. Well, God's trying to tell them something. And he does it. He paints it plain and clear with the land they live on. He always has. In Amos chapter 4. Amos 4, verse 8. Man has gotten really smart, he thinks. He's creating weather. He thinks that he can produce rain. He thinks he can produce storms. And to a degree he can. But God okays it or not. Even at the best of his ability, he can't do anything God doesn't allow. Because God oversees it all. And a lot of times he lets man think he's doing something, when all he's doing is further damning himself. And God says, oh, good, I was going to curse that spot anyway. Go ahead. Amos 4, verse 7. Amos 4, verse 7. And also I have withholden the rain from you, when there were yet 3 months to the harvest. And I caused it to rain upon one city, and caused it not to rain upon another city. One piece was rained upon, and the piece whereupon it rained not withered. So 2 or 3 cities wandered unto one city to drink water, but they were not satisfied. Okay, we've talked about this before. The problem is the nutrients are gone. We were just talking about that. The agriculture in America, what they've done is they've planted and planted and planted on the same plot of ground and depleted the nutrients. God had that thing set up. You do it for 7 years and take a break. Let the land begin to heal again. And then you can come back to it. And he says, I'll make up for the year you took off. Well, that'd be a good idea to do. What they used to do, I don't know what they're doing nowadays, but what they used to do is they would plant, and then rather than replant the same thing on the same field, they would rotate the crops so that you're pulling different nutrients. But you can only do that non-stop without a break so many centuries, and there's nothing left. Now, at some point, unless you're adding back to it, God said, if you just leave it alone, I'll take care of it. And he would. He says in Joel chapter 1, Joel 1 verse 16. Joel 1 verse 16. Is not the meat cut off before our eyes? Yea, well, I guess they all went vegan then. Vegetarian. When there's meat cut off. You know, that's a great curse. The curse is that when you sit down to eat, there's no meat on the plate. I mean, if you study it, I keep telling you subjects that I've not given you all the verses for, but you can look them up. Look it up in the Bible sometime. God's not a vegetarian. Meat is what he intends you to eat. There was a time they were vegetarian. That was the time that the cattle were friendly with man. But man reached a curse to some degree where God said, okay, animals, I'm going to turn against you. We're going to see it again here in a minute. But I'm going to turn the animals against you. And your recourse for that is you can eat them. And so then we eat meat and we get nutrients from it. He says in Joel 1:16, is not the meat cut off before our eyes? Yea, joy and gladness from the house of our God. The seed is rotted under their clods. The garners are laid desolate. The barns are broken down, for the corn is withered. How do the beasts groan? The herds of the cattle are perplexed, because they have no pasture. Yea, the flocks of the sheep are made desolate. That's Venezuela. Nothing to eat. Nothing you can put on the shelf. No money you could use to buy anything with anyway. That's what God's done in the past. It's the hand of God. Verse 19, O Lord, to thee will I cry. There's the answer. For the fire hath devoured the pastures of the wilderness. The flame hath burned all the trees of the field. But at least it didn't get Walmart. Americans nowadays don't realize, the young ones, some of them do, but most of them don't, that food doesn't come from Walmart. It comes from a field. Well, I saw something where somebody put this on Facebook. Some millennial was saying, how dare you go out and shoot animals for food? Just go to Walmart like the rest of us and get it. That's where it comes from. God will cut it off at the source. The beasts of the field cry also unto thee, for the rivers of water are dried up. That's what's going on in Israel right now, Jordan River. And the fire hath devoured the pastures of the wilderness. We're getting close. The end is coming. Now, I won't be around for the final week of it, the final 7 years. However, we're getting real close to getting out of here.
Amen.
Not because we have a special sign when we leave, but we've got some signs that God says, I'm talking to Israel again. And when he starts talking to Israel again, that means I'm getting out. So it won't be long. Hosea 4, verse 4. Hosea 4, verse 4. Yet let no man strive, nor reprove another, for thy people are as they that strive with the priests. Okay, you're going to find two sets of priests in this passage. One set of priests is the priests that are trying to do the right thing, follow the rules, obey God. You find another set of priests who are apostate. I believe that's down in verse 6 maybe. Yeah. He says they're striving with the priest. They're having an argument with the priest. What that means is they're having an argument with God, because the priest was the mouthpiece for God. That was the institution he was running. Look at it in Deuteronomy 17. Deuteronomy 17, verse 12. And the man that will do presumptuously, and will not hearken unto the priest that standeth to minister before the Lord thy God, or unto the judge, even that man shall die, and thou shalt put away the evil from Israel. God said all of Israel is guilty of this as a nation, corporately. They're striving with the priest. They're arguing with what God had to say. And so when they do that, they're guilty and they need to be put to death. He's leveled a death sentence against the whole nation. That's capital punishment, borderlining genocide. And that's God saying it, because they've earned it. Now, not all of them, because there's always a remnant. And this first, the priest that was right, of course, they've not been guilty of anything. So they're okay, but the rest of them are not. Hosea 4, verse 5. Hosea 4, verse 5. Therefore shalt thou fall in the day, and the prophet also shall fall with thee in the night. And I will destroy thy mother. We've found the mother there to represent the nation, the one who, the mothers are what produced the nations. Without a mother, there are no children. Okay, so the nation is produced, is called a her. Many times Israel is referred to as a her, and you'll see it over and over in this book. The her refers to the nation. And he's saying here, there's two things, two calamities that are going to strike. One happens in the day, and one happens in the night. Okay, let's figure out what this is all talking about. Jeremiah chapter 6. Jeremiah chapter 6, verse 4. Prepare you war against her. Arise, and let us go up at noon. That's daytime. Woe unto us, for the day goeth away, for the shadows of the evening are stretched out. That is, they're going to be dying in the daytime. Usually that's where war happens, in the daytime. It was an odd thing for somebody to fight a night battle. That would be weird. You needed to be able to see. Now, we got little computers and infrared and all that stuff we can use nowadays. But back in the day, they fought during the day. But our verse said somebody's going to fall at night. Something special about that. The inhabitants fall during the daytime. That's the people, the nation. But the prophets, the false leaders, the ones who had been, you either push God's agenda or you push the devil's. If you're a minister of the devil, God puts your light out in obscure darkness, he says. That's night. The prince of darkness is the devil. So his followers go out in the night, in darkness. Get in Malachi 3. Malachi 3, verse 6. Malachi 3, verse 6. This is, basically this book is to the priests of Israel. It's not written to Israel, it's written to the hierarchy of Israel. Malachi 3, verse 6. Therefore night shall be unto you, that ye shall not have a vision, and it shall be dark unto you, that ye shall not divine. And the sun shall go down over the prophets, and the day shall be dark over them. Micah. I told you Malachi, didn't I? Micah. Micah 3:6. Micah 3:6. That's right. I'm using the original. We got the Syriac Peshuta up here. Okay. Their abode is going to be in outer darkness because that's where the devil dwells. And I believe there's something going on here that's referring to more than just human. In the tribulation, there's going to be some rulers. There's going to be a prophet, an evil prophet, a false prophet. Okay, that's an office that should be from God, prophet. But he's talked about false prophets. Well, in the tribulation, they're going to be demonic prophets and demonic things. And their end is going to end in total night, outer darkness. Judges verse 13. I always want to say a chapter when I get to Judges, but there's no chapters. Judges verse 13. Jude. Yeah, Judges has no chapters. It's all one chapter. Jude, verse 13. Now these are the people who are trying to fool God's nation, Israelites. The devil's got ministers, he says. They transform themselves as the ministers of God, and they're not. They're ministers of the devil. I think they're here now. You look around, you'll find them. And they look good, they sound good, until you line them up with a Bible. Then suddenly you shine enough light on it and you see it's pure darkness. Jude, verse 13. Raging waves of the sea, foaming out their own shame, wandering stars, that is black holes, to whom is reserved the blackness of darkness forever. Those are going out at night. That's probably supernatural things, not necessarily the humans. Now the humans will end in utter darkness because they'll go to be with their father, the devil. An example is given in Acts chapter 13. Acts 13, verse 8. This is obviously a worker of the devil. Acts 13, verse 8. But Elymas, that guy, the sorcerer, for so is his name by interpretation, withstood them, seeking to turn away the deputy from the faith. He's going against the gospel. Verse 9. Then Saul, who is called Paul, filled with the Holy Ghost, set his eyes upon him and said, O full of all subtlety. That's where the devil's first identification mark was. And all mischief, thou child of the devil, thou enemy of all righteousness, wilt thou not cease to pervert the right ways of the Lord? And now, behold, the hand of the Lord is upon thee, and thou shalt be blind, not seeing the sun for a season. And immediately there fell upon him a mist of darkness, and he went about seeking some to lead him by the hand. Yeah, blind leaders of the blind. That's what he's going to get. That thing follows, it's a theme that follows all through the Bible. We're going to pick it up again in verse 6. But that darkness and blindness is a sign of spiritual condition. Now, it's more than just spiritual condition. When God sent darkness to the land of Egypt, he says it was darkness that could be felt. You go into some towns, and they're so wicked, you can feel the spirit. You can feel the darkness in it. There's a depression. There's an atmosphere there that you can actually feel, and that's a darkness. Hosea 4, look at verse 6. We'll just pick up probably half of this verse and leave the rest of it for next time. Hosea 4, verse 6. My people, that is Israel, not Christians, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me. Seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God, I will also forget thy children. That's rough. He said they're destroyed for lack of knowledge. In Malachi, and I really mean Malachi this time, Malachi 2, Malachi 2, verse 7. This, of course, is directed at priests that should have known better but didn't do better. So these would be false priests. They're corrupt priests. Malachi 2, verse 7. He says, for the priest's lips should keep knowledge, and they should seek the law at his mouth, for he is the messenger of the Lord of hosts. That is, the priest is supposed to be the spokesman for God, and the people are supposed to come to the priest and say, we need some help from God. Get a hold of God and tell him this. And what instructions do you have from God to give me? Well, if the priest is not doing his job and you can't get any knowledge from the priest, it's all no good. It's a curse of God's what it is. In Jeremiah 15, verse 10, Jeremiah 15, verse 10. Now, prophetically, we can see some symbols in here. Now, I take the Bible as literal, and it is literal. But there's also a prophetic explanation for most passages in the Bible as well. Woe is me, he's a Jew, my mother, the nation of Israel, that thou hast borne me a man of strife and a man of contention to the whole earth. I have neither lent on usury, nor have men lent to me on usury, yet every one of them doth curse me. Isn't the whole world against Israel? And they always have. Now, what was supposed to be the blessing to Israel? I'll set you on high above all the other nations. You'll lend to many, and you'll borrow from none. He says, I've not lent to anybody, and nobody's lending to me. The blessing has not come in because they're men of war. It's a curse of God. He's destroying them. Look down at verse 19. Therefore, thus saith the Lord, if thou return, then will I bring thee again, and thou shalt stand before me. And if thou take forth the precious from the vile, that is, that's what the priest's job was. He's supposed to identify, this is holy, this is unholy, this is clean, this is filthy. Priests weren't doing that anymore. He says, if you'll do all that again, thou shalt be as my mouth. That's what the priests were supposed to be doing, telling God's message. Let them return unto thee, but return not thou unto them. That is, no more apostate, pleasing people from you as a priest. Hosea 4, look at verse 1. The problem was this. Look at the last accusation, the last point of his message. Nor knowledge of God in the land. How were they going to get knowledge of God? Remember, they didn't have a Bible. They couldn't go down to the bookstore and buy one. Now, they had the first 5 books memorized, but other than that, well, at this point, they probably weren't memorizing much of it. He says the priest is one that's responsible for passing on the knowledge, but the priests weren't doing their job. So no wonder there was no knowledge of God in the land, because the priest who's responsible for it wasn't doing it. Jesus Christ is mad at the scribes and the Pharisees and the hypocrites. That was their job. They were supposed to be passing on his message, and they weren't doing it. Look at Psalm chapter 119. This is the chapter that is the Bible commentary on the Bible. The Bible likes to promote itself. This is the longest chapter in the Bible, and it's all about the Bible. I like that. It's a good book to read, is what it's saying. Psalm 119, verse 88. Quicken, that's bring to life, me after thy loving kindness. So shall I keep the testimony of thy mouth. Okay, there's where it counts. That's true knowledge. Look at verse 130. The entrance of thy words, plural, that is, in a book, giveth light. It giveth understanding to the simple. There's light, as in the opposite of outer darkness, and understanding, the point that Hosea was making to the nation. That's one of your problems, no understanding. He says in our verse, in verse 6, Hosea 4:6, because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest. Don't be trying to be a leader of my people if you're not going to lead them the way I tell you to. Be no priest unto me. He said you'll be a priest, but it'll be in title only. There will be no power behind it. In 1 Samuel 2, verse 12. 1 Samuel 2, verse 12. You'll find some priests here that were just like this. Priests in name only, but in actuality they were priests of the devil. 1 Samuel 2, verse 12. Now the sons of Eli were sons of Belial, sons of the devil. They knew not the Lord. That's twice this has come up. Somebody called a child of the devil. That's what Cain was called, of that wicked one. I think over and over, anybody who follows their spiritual father is considered the child of whoever, God or the devil. Isaiah 28 verse 7. Isaiah 28, verse 7. This is really a message that should be preached to preacher meetings, not congregations, but you're here, so I'm going to preach it. Isaiah 28, verse 7. But they also have erred through wine and through strong drink are out of the way. The priests and the prophet have erred through strong drink. They are swallowed up of wine. Instead of swallowing the wine swallowed them. They are out of the way through strong drink. They err in vision. They stumble like at night in judgment. Okay, they can't do their job. Why? He put the blame right there on alcohol. So, that's going to be a big problem in our day. Believe it or not, that's a problem that's haunted all of history, is alcohol. From the time that Noah got off the ark until the Antichrist goes down into the pit, it's going to be a fight with the bottle, according to the Bible. Jeremiah 2 verse 8. The priest should have woke up and said, we're just making up garbage here. You'd think at some point they would say, I'm tired of doing charades here. Where's the power? I don't know why. Eli was used to seeing the most holy place lit up with the presence of God, and then it went out. Now, why wasn't he begging God to come back?
Why did he not notice it?
Oh, he noticed it. He knew it. That's obvious. But he didn't beg God to bring it back. He knew what it was. He understood it 100%. It's because he wouldn't call his sons on the carpet. And because of that, he just was okay with God not being there. If that meant he didn't have to kill his sons. Bad trade. Jeremiah 2 verse 8. The priest said not, where is the Lord? Eli should have said that. He should have said, wait a minute. I'm faking up here if there's no God behind it. And they that handle the law knew me not. The pastors also transgressed against me, and the prophets prophesied by Baal, and walked after the things that do not profit. Two different prophets in there. You're either a prophet of the Lord or you're a prophet for profit. Profit for money. We talked about it earlier. There's something about coinage, dollar bills, that's wickedness. The root of all evil goes back to money. The love of money is the root of all evil. Some of you weren't here this morning when I was talking about it, so I'll say it again. I think that was Sunday school. That verse right there says the root of all, the love of money is the root of all evil. Now, what most people will do is they'll spiritualize that. And they'll say it's not money, it's the love of it. But what that does is it changes your focus. See, if I say that, you know what you think? You think, oh, it's lust. It's covetousness. The verse did not say that. The verse does not say the covetousness is the root of all evil, or that lust is the root of all evil. It says the love of a specific thing. The love, not the love of all things wrong, one thing. The love of money. And that's what Lucifer's downfall was. So anyway, that you didn't need to know that, but I told it to you anyway. Let's find Jesus confront these people. Matthew 23. When the hierarchy is working for the devil, they're in darkness. They're going out at night. They'll be put out in pure darkness. Matthew 23, we'll pick it up in verse 16. And I'm not going to read every word to you. Usually I do, but I'm not. Because it's going to repeat so many times that we'll just be able to enjoy it for what it is. Matthew 23, verse 16. Woe unto you, ye blind guides. Verse 17. Ye fools and blind. Verse 19. Ye fools and blind. I think it's a broken record. Verse 24. Ye blind guides, Verse 26. Thou blind Pharisees. I think he's making a point. Now who's he talking to? Verse 34. Wherefore, behold, I send unto you prophets. Okay, so Israel's going to get some prophets from God, and wise men, and scribes, and some of them ye shall kill and crucify, and some of them shall ye scourge in your synagogues, and persecute them from city to city. What happens when they do that? Verse 38. Behold, your house, the house of Israel, the nation, is left unto you desolate. And that's exactly what's going on in Hosea's day. He's prophesying it. The nation of Israel will be left desolate. Verse 39. For I say unto you, ye shall not see me henceforth, till ye shall say, Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. That is a real prophet, not these prophets of Baal. And he's going to send them some. Moses and Elijah, the two witnesses. Some prophets are going to come back. But the nation is not going to return to Christ until they say, we want a true prophet. We're sick of these prophets of Baal. Now, that blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord, that's an interesting phrase. It gives you a picture of what's going to happen. That's always a sign or a reference to the second advent. Let's find it. Malachi 4. Malachi 4, verse 2. Malachi 4, 2. But unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in his wings, and ye shall go forth and grow up as calves of the stall. That is, they're looking for, they fear his name. They're looking for Jesus Christ. And they say, this verse says that he'll return the second time. That he's been back once. And he's going to return a second time. And remind me when we're done to get back to second time. Oh, second time. That's what I want to come back to. So Hebrews chapter 9. Hebrews 9, verse 28. So Christ was once offered to bear the sins of many, and unto them that look for him shall he appear the second time without sin unto salvation. That is, just like he said in Matthew 23, you're not going to see me again. Not that you'll never see me again. And he's talking to a nation, not individuals. The nation of Israel, we know the nation will finally get to see him at the end of the tribulation when the millennium starts. And that day, it's going to be this right here. Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. And they'll be blessing him and they'll be looking for him. Just like he said in Hebrews, they that look for him. They're looking for him. Now that's the start of the millennium. Now he says there the second time. And I'll just give you, I'll go off the deep end here and give you my particular. You can come up with your own. I've got this second time, meaning the second rapture of the tribulation. I believe there's a first one that is 10 days after the midpoint of the tribulation, because the two witnesses are dead and in the streets for 10 days. So, no, they're for 7 days, 3 days, 3.5 days. So anyway, after that, I put it at the second woe. That would be the second time. So if you look for him, then you can go up in the second rapture when he returns. Or if you don't, then you'll go down with the rest of them and take your chance at making it through the millennium. Now, I think a lot of people will make it through the tribulation and show up at the millennium right when it's about to start. And Jesus sends the angels, he says, to gather out all that offend. And they'll have made it all the way through that horrible time of tribulation. And right at the end, when everything's about to get good, he'll say, wait a minute, we've got some fakers in here. I see some people over there without a wedding garment on. Angels go over there and take them, cast them into everlasting fire. Whew, that'd be rough. Now we saw this morning, I covered it and I saw it, but I didn't make note of it. I know where it is in Genesis 7. Genesis 7, I think it's verse 2. It's not verse 2. No, yet 7 days. Where is that? Where is it? Chapter 4? 7 verse 4? Yes, that's it. Glad y'all can read. This is the tribulation. He says, for yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and every living substance that I have made will I destroy from the face of the earth. Okay, that tells you, that is the tribulation. The 7 days is tribulation. You know what happens in those 7 days? All of the pain and the struggle and the fight and all the Antichrist stuff. That's Daniel's 70th week, the final week, 7 days. You know what happens at the end of the 7 days? The end of the 7 days, God destroys all of those that are evil. And that's what he does at Armageddon. And for Noah, Noah is not a picture of the rapture. Noah is a picture of a tribulation saint. He's a picture of the saint that goes all the way through and remains to go into the millennium. Because he stays through, he gets all through that, all the destruction falls, kills all the wicked people, and then he does what? Inherits the earth. Exactly what the Jew is said to do in Matthew chapter 5. All right, that'll do it for tonight. I went way off the deep end on that one, but y'all make sense of it. Okay, we'll pick up next week at Hosea 4. No, I'm going to do 6 again.